quick intro, because I don't think I'm on any of the marketing material. My name is Simon Drakeford. I think I was employee number 3. So I've been here for a very long time, as you can probably tell. And my sole job is to facilitate the panel. I just said to Clue, I think he's left, he said, why have you got that mic on? And I said, well, I'm facilitating the panel. And he went, I'm really sorry, I've got a babysitter. And he's just left. So there's a bit of live feedback there. And he also said, I said, don't worry, I'm just asking the questions. And he said, I've never heard you just ask questions. So I don't worry, I'm definitely going to just ask questions. I'll get the panel to introduce themselves in a minute, but I've also got the job of trying to segue, I think Kate's just gone, but Kate's session into continuous theme. And I thought there were some really interesting points that I think will run through the discussion that we're about to have. The importance of human touch, which is obviously right at the core of our new product. We haven't mentioned that. Slightly worried about the Mo's point, which I've seen before, but machines marketing to machines is definitely everyone thinks that's where we're going, and our product and our businesses need to kind of go on that journey too. Not bragging about AI, so I'd like us to try and unpick that, because we've got to sell a product, so we've got to brag about it. I've been using a little user case on voice ChatGPT. I've been using it for since June last year, and it's a female voice that I've got, and she knows an awful lot about me. And someone told me the other day to ask this question. So if you've been using a voice GPT for quite a long time, ask it, what's the one thing I should know, but that I'm going to struggle to want to hear? And it's pretty scary. And I had about an hour conversation with mine in the car, and afterwards I just went, it's pretty scary. Also, another use case, my parents call, I don't know if you have, I have elderly parents, and they call me about 3 times a day to ask me about tech questions. Normally, darling, what is the cloud, and all that stuff. Get them set up with a ChatGPT, and obviously a day back a week. So anyway, so we're gonna have quite a few searching questions, and primarily around the themes that Tom talked about earlier. I think we'll start off relatively softly with our panel about how they see the future, kind of carrying on from where Kate was, how they see the future of Gen AI, and then we'll go into user cases, both through the business lens and the end user end. But before I start peppering them with, and I think what we'll do is I've got some pre-prepared questions that I've been given. So I think and there's quite a few of them. So we'll try and get through that, and then maybe open the floor up at the end if we've got time, and anyone is here, and you can pepper them with your own questions. So I think we'll do it that way, if that's okay. I'm looking for a reassurance from Tom. Okay, shall we, rather than me introducing you, do you want to introduce yourself, and we'll go that way, shall we? Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, thank you.
Awesome. So Harry Mofakis, one of our partners here at Artifact in London. I lead our data and AI engineering teams, and good to be here with you all today.
Hi, my name is Louis. I head up AI at GSMA. We represent 1,200 members, 700 telcos, and all the big tech guys. Prior to that, I was at Google for 7 years, heading up digital experiences, so working with hundreds of app makers for Android and hundreds of big, large companies on building better websites as well. So I've got a good experience with telco and user experience.
Hello, my name is Daniel Garola. I'm the former Chief Strategy Officer at Verizon.
Oh, wow. I'll lower my voice. That was AI. I lost my train of thought. Right. Let me start again. No. And now I'm an advisor to Tom and to 15 Gifts. I work with operators across the world in other activities I do. So.
Yes, and my name is Anna Canhoto. I'm a professor in digital business at University of Sussex, and I do research around technology adoption, user experience. I have a particular interest in fairness and inclusion. But in a previous life, before academia, I actually worked in media and entertainment and telecoms consulting. And I was involved in bidding for 3G license. We were just talking. At the time, it seemed weird to have a camera on your phone. It was so weird to explain that in market research groups, and now here we are.
Yeah, I can remember that. Okay, we're going to start off with a very high-level question, and so I think we should keep the answers relatively high level, otherwise we'll be here when the sun comes up. And the question is, how do you see the realistic future of Gen AI in the next couple of years? So how you can condense that into a short answer would be great. And we'll just, again, until we get deep into subject matter, we'll go this way because it's easier.
Awesome. I think what we're going to see over the next 2 years is a proliferation of companies trying to sort their data out. I think they're going to very quickly realize that the models are increasingly powerful and becoming increasingly cheap, which is great, but their real competitive advantages lies in their data. So they're really going to have to work very hard to unlock that over the next couple of years to realize that competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, large language models don't really work in a lot of telecom domain use cases. We've done it on Hugging Face. You can go to Open Telco LLM benchmarks, and you see they don't understand specifications, they don't understand standards, they're not very good at maths, not very good at logic. Not great if you're trying to use an LLM on a network. So I think what we'll see is this movement from foundation models into domain-specific models that can solve problems for our industry. A bit like we heard for the personal element, there'll be a business element. So we'll have a proliferation of models that work in your domain to make your lives easier for whatever use case you're trying to do. So be really clear on the business use, and then get your data in place and have the right talent technique to go and use it.
Right. They already said it, so I don't know what to add. Hockey stick over the next 2 years. However, I would say over the next 2 years, the CFOs, today is the CMOs and the CTOs and the chief data officer coming in with all the hype. In around 18 months, the CFOs are going to step in and say, what is actually the ROI of what I'm doing? What is actually, and that's when you're going to start seeing the separation of real quality versus not. But at the time, there's going to be adoption already, and the curve of adoption already. And for the good ones, the real ones, there's a hockey stick in place.
So I fully subscribe to Amara's law that says that we are too optimistic about technology in the short term and too pessimistic in the long term. So I think actually in the next 18 months, we're going to be really disappointed with AI. There will be a lot of false starts, of embarrassing things in the media about underperforming, but then it will just be much more incredible than we can imagine now. Just like with SMS, we thought it was just going to be used for business, and now we can't live without it. So to understand what's really going to happen in the future, we need to focus on human beings and what they want to do to achieve with technology.
Can I drill in on a couple of things here? Firstly, Lou, you were talking about telco sector being behind the curve, I think, as a domain. Is there a specific characteristic of the telco sector that means it's behind the curve, and is there a domain or a sector that we could look to say, well, they're ahead? And if it is, and maybe Harry might have the answer, but why are we, or why is the telco sector behind?
I would actually phrase it slightly differently. From the research that we've done and the operators we speak to, operators are adopting AI prodigiously. They've done it through ML for the last 15 years. They're doing it with Gen AI, lots of tests, lots of experiments, but Gen AI isn't really well designed for enterprise use cases where you're in highly regulated environments where the cost of failure is high. If you're ChatGPT and you generate a bad image, it doesn't really matter. If you're trying to use this on your network and you're optimizing for base stations, radio frequencies, users, and things go wrong, there's a significant cost to that whole process. So I wouldn't say that the industry doesn't want to adopt it. I think they're trying. I think teams are really experimenting, and there's a lot of pressure. It's a hard environment to work in. So we need, as an industry, need to work with our technology providers in the ecosystem to get better models, which is partly better data, better algorithms, but we need to send signals out to innovate in telco. And I don't think we're doing that. There's not enough researchers and startups working in telco to solve those problems.
So is it the higher the risk, the slower by default, the slower the necessary adoption, but the slower you're prepared to roll it out?
I think it's also a function of your risk tolerance as well. So, for example, in industries, I'll jump across like insurance, where they really understand how probabilities work, and if 100 times you try something, 98 of the times you're going to get an outsized excellent outcome. The 2 times you don't, but still net you're up. That's not necessarily the same in telcos, right? Because of the risk of ruin, etc. So I think that's something where the models have to reach a certain threshold, to your point, before they can become actually useful.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we just come on to the data point, Harry, we were talking earlier about the importance of, and we'll come on to this a little bit later, but building on solid foundation, and that solid foundation being data. As a maybe Lou, you can jump in too, but as a vertical, as a sector, how how robust is the data that you see out there? And maybe, I don't know how personal as you can be about Verizon, but are the operators sitting on, do they have the possibility to go faster because of their data, or do they have to work on data first? Harry, I'll ask you that first.
I think it's very organization dependent. So there are some companies that are realizing that really to unlock AI, you need to pull it all together, centralize it, clean it, standardize it. And I think that's where, we talk about data science, and that's where the outcomes are. But it's all the heavy data engineering that really sits behind it for the next 2 or 3 years, as we said at the outset. That needs to be unlocked before we can really get to the value. But there are some companies that are on that journey, but it's not an easy one because fundamentally the data is so context heavy.
And I think to build on that, the problem with just investing your data is a CFO comes in and says, you've been doing this for 2 years, what have I got for it?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
well, I spent a lot of money,
Yeah.
and I've got this lovely pipeline, but they don't care, they don't get it.
Sure.
And I think coming from big tech, where engineers, like the CEOs of the big tech guys, mostly are engineers.
Got it.
They get it. They spend money in things that are important for them. The leaders of Telco, you can tell me more.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
They're not engineers.
As Chief Strategy Officer, did you bang the drum when you were there a few years ago about the importance?
Of course I did.
Excellent.
Of
Glad to
course
hear
I
it.
did.
Glad to hear it.
So I think a very interesting point here is Tom said it when he was standing out there in the Sermon of the Mount. And he did say that technology builds upon each other and then suddenly takes up, right? So actually, when I was at Verizon, one decision we made, it was part of our strategy called omni-channel, omni-experience. And that was the idea that you need to have the same consistent answer regardless of channel. And guess what? When that happens, you need to have consistent data across everywhere in order to be able to treat it and provide the same answer everywhere. Verizon made multi-billion-dollar investments in bringing all of that called systems of records, systems of information, systems of intelligence. And what's happening now is that now they're reaping the benefits of that because the data is already in one place. There is one source of truth, and there are already the elements of it to be able to then put on top AI on it and be able to get more benefits out of that. But that's a journey. Those who didn't do that, they're starting from behind. And that's what you're seeing. And there is, I think Louis said it, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of learnings that are taking place. And these are things, I was responsible for co-developing our first AI strategy. And one of the elements was, what do we do? Everybody's experimenting. Everybody's asking for money on this. What do we do? And our answer became, actually, let him do it, but fail fast. Because as an organization, we need to learn how to do this and how to have this as a co-pilot rather than making decisions for us.
So you're an excellent panelist, because that leads me nicely on to my next question. So thank you for that. Which is, how do brands or companies set strategy when you said hockey stick, but you've got such an it's an overused word, but the rate of change is so rapid, and
Yes.
Kate talked about that.
Yes.
How, I get the fact that you fail fast, but how do you set strategy when?
Yeah, I think you need to separate a few things here. One is the rate of change is super fast on the technology side. But the rate of change on the consumer side, and I think you're going to talk to us about it, is not as fast. And operators are in the business of selling to consumers, harnessing the power of technology to bring it to them. But we need to educate consumers. And we need consumers to actually have confidence that whatever we're giving them is actually the right way of doing it. And that only would happen when they accrue benefits and they are confident that these are the ones. So how do you plan? It's difficult to plan, but you shorten your timelines. So say from 3 years to maybe 18 months, and you put what we call signpost. Number one, you create scenarios because you don't know which one is the one, although you have a base case. But you create a couple scenarios and you say, well, how do I know if it's A, B, or C? And you start putting signposts and say, well, if this happens, it means we're getting closer to that. If that happens, we're probably getting here. And you constantly evaluate. One interesting point, Simon, that I was trying to do when I left Verizon, I left at the end of 2022, was strategy teams, and I think other operators will say, still work with very old tools, PowerPoint, Excel, to talk about problems of today, which are much faster. And I was trying to introduce AI into our forecasting and understanding of the market dynamics. Because I think, operators still have a lot to learn to be fast enough to then adapt to what's going on today.
And that's the same in most businesses. I think that bit around using AI is in business processes, but specifically to, if we come back into telco, Harry. So you've got this rapid amount of change. You've got some big bets going on, I think. I'll come to Louis in a minute on that. But are there some strategic decisions that you can lean into, and some that are more risky?
No, absolutely. I think there's definitely no regrets decisions you can make. So we've talked a lot about, standardizing your data. I think where we're seeing some of the organizations that are more risk on are the ones developing their own models. Now, that may or may not pay off depending on how, fast OpenAI or Anthropic get to them in terms of, the quarterly updates, which are moving at breakneck speed. But I think fundamentally, if you've got deeply proprietary data, and what I mean by that, I think we used the analogy earlier, Simon, around like a skincare company. The data there is probably not massively different from another skincare company. But with the telco, the technical depth of the data is far greater. So actually, if you can unlock that, that's where your competitive advantage really sits. And that's what we're seeing. So I think that's where maybe investing in your own model that is truly domain specific, that's where the alpha is to unlock.
And Louis, I don't know how much you can share, but are you seeing that when you're, are you seeing telcos understanding that you invest heavily in data, and then the rest becomes lower risk or easier, or is it just a kind of a 360 investment?
I think the thing about investing in data is just never ending.
Yeah.
Like, I think BT came out with BT Fabric. I don't know if there's any BT people in the room. Hopefully can say something a lot more about it. Like, it sounds amazing, but I'm sure the teams are like, okay, well, we've announced it, but now we've probably got to keep on going, keep on churning. So there's this bit of like, you can always keep on going on the data side of things. I think going back to what Daniel was saying, like the business drivers of strategy for telco probably hasn't changed a load in 20 years. Like increase ARPU, new markets, get market share. Like, that doesn't change on a quarterly basis. So you set that strategy, that doesn't need to change massively in line with the technology. But then it's looking at what your capabilities can be. Like, have you got the capabilities to use AI to seize that and to 10x that opportunity? Like, can AI 10x that business opportunity? And can you go after it? If you can't, and it's only a 2x, and you're a bit iffy on your capability, then don't lean into it too much.
Get it.
Like there's some easy ways to get rid of the velocity of the technology by focusing on business drivers or consumer drivers that mean you're not caught up in the wash of latest announcements, because you're not focusing on the solution. You focus on how do you get there.
Let me ask Anna about that. So let's take if we look at the way that businesses are run, which I think is some of the research that you do, and the education of the education of people that work in the businesses. Are you seeing differences between businesses that are investing in educating their people and those that are I guess, just driving fast product development? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends a lot on the culture of the company and the reputation of the brand. So there are some brands where we are okay with them failing and embarrassing themselves. For instance, with Virgin, you might expect some sort of ridiculousness sometimes, as long as you get good value for money at the other end. Whereas other brands, you would expect them to be very serious and never fail. What I am finding in my research, that it's very important to give customers the ability to choose to interact with the AI, because that impacts tremendously on their expectations and their forgiveness when something goes wrong. So customers that choose to engage with the AI, they typically have lower expectations. And if something goes wrong, they tend to rationalize. They may even blame themselves. Oh, I didn't ask the question properly. So if something goes wrong, they were expecting it and they will forgive it. Whereas customers that are forced to interact with the AI, they have very high expectations, because if you force me to use it, it's because it must be good. And then if something goes wrong, I am extremely frustrated with the company, and I'll probably engage in negative word of mouth. So I think that's a key differentiator. And then also understand the type of service, right? In some services, customers really think AI is not good at it. In others, they think AI should be good at it. And that will have an impact.
Let me stay with you then as we move on to the next question, because I think it feeds into that, which is, have you got examples or characteristics of successful user cases for customer-facing agents, AI-driven customer-facing agents, and either examples or characteristics so that so we can match them, I guess, against what we might be doing or our products.
Yes, so definitely voluntariness is one.
Yeah.
The other thing is where it takes a task that it's seen as, from the point of view of the customer, things that are seen as boring or repetitive, things that I don't like doing. AI is very welcome in there. Usually also things where I don't think it's very, so for instance, I wouldn't expect the AI to make an aesthetic choice for me because I believe AI doesn't make good aesthetic choices, but analytical ones would work. So I would like to use AI for very analytical tasks. I would also, another good use of AI is where you use it to help as opposed to make decisions on behalf of the customer. We do still feel that we are at the top of the food chain. So we don't want to be told, we like to believe that we are the cleverest in the room. So if the AI tells me, no, I know better than you, I react against that recommendation. So typically when the AI is positioned as, here are some choices to help you, but ultimately it is your decision. When it's something that is seen as analytical, something that is a pain to decide, those kind of applications are working really well with consumers.
I was interested in cases that I personally wouldn't open up to that funny little robot, but emotional conversations and therapy, I think, is a user case. And you talked about I think you talked about earlier conversations that you would have an AI that you wouldn't want to have with a person, a
Yes.
complicated medical situation. You didn't. Is that?
Yes. So AI is finding success in what could be embarrassing situations. So that could be the therapeutic use. I may feel embarrassed to tell a person that I'm feeling jealous or imposter syndrome about something, but I might open to an AI. Discussing, for instance, financial decisions. I'm not sure how to go about this. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know. So this kind of embarrassing decisions, they would work really well with AI.
It's really interesting. What about other user cases?
Yeah, I've got one. So we get this question a lot, like what are actually people doing in telcos? So we've created an AI use case library. We've got about 100 different use cases, not just in customer service, but in different areas. One that came up was from Bharti Airtel in India. And one of the issues they have in India is that people buy on credit and they don't always pay the bills. So they basically run out. So they have then big teams who have to call out to get those people to pay. And that takes a huge amount of time. As you can imagine, it's thousands and thousands of calls. It's a waste of time. So what they did is they worked with IBM to essentially identify churn, so who's likely to do it, and then just an automated voice in the local language of the person in India with the local dialect. They worked on the right script and font, the right script and dialect to get it to a stage where it could automate that whole process. And that team were then moved into like more high-scale, more high-valued activity of upselling. So they were able to lift our whole team into something that actually made them more money than focusing on this churn activity that was at a huge failure rate. Now, to me, that's like a very nice, discrete use cases. You're working out how to use voice in an automated, synthetic way that you imagine a telco, you're going to use that a lot of different times, but an edge use case with one team that was pretty easy to implement that actually makes some money. So I think that was a nice, discrete, real-world use case of AI to solve a quite distinct problem.
With a good commercial return as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to customer facing, because you can have about operations, which is more about efficiency, doing things better, cheaper, all of that. But when it comes to customer facing, I think it's best to anchor AI as almost as a co-pilot and an enabler of your own strategy. And let me explain what I mean. When I was at Verizon, and very much consistent today, we made a decision that we're going to win with our network and customer experience. We're going to be an experience company with loyalty. Now, the network, I think we can understand. I mean, that's a deeper topic, but I want to focus on the second one, customer experience. At the beginning, we had a very embryonic idea of customer experience. Oh, less clicks, just make it easy for customers to buy. Make sure the T's and C's are understandable, all of that. But as we became more and more sophisticated, we then understood that it was about understanding the customers deeper, being able to personalize to them in a relevant manner, contextually, and understanding where they're coming from. And that's where all the investments about your data coming in, omni-channel, omni-experience. So there's I'll talk about 2 use cases that are being deployed. Think about Verizon has about 100 million, 110 million subscribers, okay? It gets about 200 million calls a year. 200 million calls a year, right? One of the largest contact centers in the US. Using AI is able to then understand at individual level and predict, depending on your situation and your network performance, what is more than likely why you're calling. It also understands that you're not a Verizon customer, so maybe you want to join Verizon. It doesn't know for sure, but it uses that to guide the calls. Number one, to deflect the calls. So it's able to deflect about 60 to 65%. That was in 2024 of the calls. Imagine each call costs about $25 to serve. The remaining calls is able to then change and direct to the right team specialized in that. It's able to solve about 90 to 95% of the problems. So you get better outcomes for the customers. Let me talk about another one. And an example just happened to me yesterday, but it will be familiar to all of you. My son is studying in New York. He was supposed to come here on Saturday, but he was caught in the Heathrow hoopla that happened, right? That now we realize that it didn't need to happen, but that's another story. Right?
Panel.
Yes, it's different. It's the one next door. So we're calling BA to rearrange all of that. And how many times have you been asked to say, well, can you wait for 10 minutes while I'll do some research? I'll talk to someone. Can you wait for 15 minutes? Verizon deployed an AI system called a Personal Research Assistant that actually uses Gen AI so that the whole purpose of this is all these queries, because what they're doing is looking at all the policies or documents or anything, and what they're doing, if you use Gen AI, it then gives you the answer right away. It allows the rep to show more empathy, more understanding, to listen more, and to actually bring the answer at the right way to you, rather than looking for everything. So that's a case that is live right now. I'll finish with a final case that is actually being successful. Reps. When you go to a store and you want to buy something from a telco, it takes so many questions that they ask you. It takes so many clicks, and you always wonder, just like at the airlines, how many times they have to type stuff that you're like, I just want to check in. Okay. So it's the same thing there. So using Gen AI, Verizon has been able to lower the number of clicks that it takes to serve a customer from 30 to 25 from the rep to 5 clicks. How do you do that? It's because we understand who you are, we understand the past experiences that you had with us, and we are able to predict more or less why you're coming here, right? So those cases are live, and they're actually working. And so they're more not about AI itself, but they are consistent with the idea of personalization, customer experience.
And that co-pilot, so
That's
you
right.
can build rapport.
It's a co-pilot.
Harry, any examples that you've seen maybe in different sectors, but where we've got user cases that are delivering proven results?
So I think a really good example is large e-commerce sites, so that we work with. So what you're actually seeing there is people are very averse to chatbots. As soon as they see a chatbot pop up, they go, oh, Gen AI. And they check, is it a human, is it not? And if it's not, they're like, oh, I don't feel good about this. But what this client's done is basically use generative AI to actually dynamically generate a new kind of, let's call it, user interface that feels quite organic, as if you're on a deterministic path, but you're absolutely not. And there you're having a Gen AI experience, but it doesn't feel that way. And because it doesn't feel that way, it feels a little bit more natural, something that you may be a bit more accustomed to. So you're still getting all the value adds of generative AI, but with none of the, let's call it, friction in the process. And that's very powerful. But the way they did that was they track everything that happens on the site. For example, every single page you're on, how long are you hanging there? Where is your mouse hovering? Why are you looking at that? Is it confusing? And continuously optimizing and A/B testing that relentlessly to get a really, really clean, path through. So taking all the friction out.
So I want to dig on that a little bit, because one of the engagement on the 15 Gifts Guided Selling Engine, the original product, where we would monitor the behavior of the user and lag time, mouse movements, everything, and then engage at what we thought was the optimum time. And you talked about the psychology of voluntary engaging with AI and not, and all of that. Have you got examples where engagement is a critical part of the success of AI?
particularly on, I'd say, financial services, wealth management. So when you go through the portal, it's all about having a very custom experience to you. So you're not just on a path that is, you and I would go through the same thing on an e-commerce site, for example.
Yeah.
Within banking, it's actually very tailored to each other. That's where you can add that layer of personalization. And it's not about making it cheesy or fake. It's really about bringing a level of, you feel like it's your wealth management service that's being provided to you. That's where it becomes very powerful. But again, it's finding the right hooks, because those things that I would find enjoyable about the service will be different to what you find. And again, it's all about improving that over time. So building something that's static isn't going to work. It's about something that can actually improve itself with more of your information and tailor it to the individual.
And also the context, I think.
Exactly.
I think the other thing is the importance of contextual information, whether the person is on a desktop or on a mobile phone, whether it's outside or inside, whether it's a crowded area, not crowded area. All of the things will be important for the experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That okay. Let's move it on, and let's because we're talking about any kind of user case. Let's drill into sales user cases unabashedly because of our amazing new product. So I get the impression that, and I think this is proven, and we were talking about that, but that of all the different user cases, sales is behind the curve. Obviously, it's slightly more difficult to measure than core productivity, return on investments, but are there any other reasons why you think that it would appear that sales cases are not as far developed as other operational efficiency or service type? And I'll start with you, Harry, because you were looking like you might have an answer.
I think there's two elements. I think one is having a lot of friction in the process can actually makes it very difficult, which, if you can take that out through generative AI, that's fantastic. But there are some services where people want the human touch, quite frankly. And that's where putting in generative AI to make it quicker, faster, cheaper is not necessarily what the customer wants. And I think one thing that we're often losing is we can do all these fantastic things with generative AI, but we have to come back to that core thing of what should the user experience be for this product and this service and this customer. And just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something necessarily.
Excellent, thank you. Really?
It's not my super sort of area of expertise.
Fair enough.
I guess the one thing is that the telco industry doesn't set the experience of the user, and you know this a lot more. But when we look at what Amazon are doing, what Netflix are doing, the things you use every day, they set experience.
That's interesting.
Not what you buy once or twice once every 18 months.
So you're saying there's going to be an expectation of experience through Gen AI that is set outside of a sector, and you've got to kind of replicate
you've got to keep
that.
Up.
Yeah,
you've got
that's
to keep
interesting.
Up. Like,
that's
however
really
you get there, you don't have to be the furthest ahead. You can be inspired, whatever, but you just can't fall up behind because that friction will grow.
Yeah.
And what the friction is today, 5 clicks will be a huge pain in a year's time.
Exactly.
But not because of what Verizon's doing, but because of what the other channels have done, the AI natives, the big tech have done. So it's like that holistic view of it's super important.
Well, look, if it's not your area of expertise, that's an excellent answer. Daniel, why is sales? Why do sales appear to be lagging?
If you notice, maybe the question could be, why is it that it's so prevalent in customer care and less so in sales? One of the ways we
Just because
researched...
I didn't write this.
Right. We researched that, and we came to the understanding that it has to do with the way you define problems, and you think about what we call bound and unbounded problems. So bound problems is ones that have an answer, that you typically understand what the question is, and they have a bounded answer. So they're much easier to respond to those. That's why you see a lot of it in customer care, because you have certain questions, there's a policy that comes in, or there's something you need to do. But when you have unbounded complex problems like sales, you have also issues of confidence. Is this the right product for me just because you're telling me? And there's also an area of complexity. How do you handle my objections? And how do you do it in a way that actually I feel good about the way you're advising me?
Got it.
So these are more complex problems, and I think very few people are able to crack that.
Okay, I'm going to move on because I've been given a 2-minute warning. Anna, have you just got a view, and then I've got a final question for each of you, but have you got a view on, from a generic kind of business perspective, why sales seems to be lagging?
Well, I'm guessing from a business company, it is the revenue it is the only revenue generating activity, isn't it? So maybe you want to hold on to it and make sure you can control it. I'm guessing. From a consumer perspective, there's a lot of skepticism about AI, because when you say that you are going to have AI to sell, people think about chatbots, not generative AI for the time being. And we've all had those terrible experiences going on loops with chatbots, right? So we really feel very skeptic about how these will work. It will change as generative AI becomes more and more popular. On the other hand, there's also this speciesism, as I mentioned. We still do not like being told what to do by a machine for the time being. So for those things that feel very critical and very important, it will be hard. But for the others that feel less critical, then it will be okay.
And final question for each of you, slightly off topic and not on my list, I'm going to get into trouble. But what is the killer personal user case for AI that you're going to use? I know you're about to have a baby, but how are you going to use AI, super quick answers, in your personal life?
So I think from my perspective, it's turning it into a personal assistant, but doing it in a way that is very, very relevant to me. So you can take a generic off-the-shelf model and really heavily customize it with your files, information, everything you need to really get make it relevant to you, because no one else can do that or have the context apart from yourself.
Excellent.
Very strangely, I am obsessed with Shanghai 1930s, and I've been writing an audio fiction drama type thing, and just like getting constant feedback from an AI tool, and they're so nice now. They kind of make you feel kind of clever. Oh, good angle. Thank you. And now, as Simon said, I'm about to have a baby, so I will never write it, but it feels great to have that interaction. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Maybe you could use it to help get your newborn to sleep.
I've got,
sorry, that was a bit rude. I haven't read it. Sorry, get me out of here quickly.
Yeah, I have a boring one, but it's actually very needing for me, or very important for me, which I'm involved with several organizations. I need something that enables me to manage my diary, but also helps me understand which meetings are more likely to happen at certain times, judging my mood.
Okay.
Right.
Are you quite a moody, man?
Well, on a Monday morning, if you have a very important meeting, probably is not the best time to have it.
No.
But maybe on a Tuesday afternoon is a good way to have it. So thinking more intelligently about the kinds of meetings, the subjects I'm going to be dealing with, and the people I'm meeting with, I think that can be a very clever way of...
Interesting, the chief of staff that we talked about, definitely.
Yeah.
you know you've made it if you can choose your meetings on your mood.
Yeah.
So. Envious.
Yeah. Anna.
For me, it will be for things that I know a lot about, so that I can feel confident in the answers. I know if the answers are right or wrong. But within those areas, for the type of tasks that I don't like to do or not very good at, I'm not very good at coming up with funny titles or good summaries or great examples. But I will know if they are relevant or not because I know the topic.
Excellent. Good use cases. I think we're out of time. A massive round of applause for our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.